All right, you guys, and now it is time for our final panel. Responding to mistakes, strategies for financial adversity. We're excited about this panel. I think it's really great for people to get to hear the not just the success stories, but the failure stories, because bad things do happen, people do make mistakes, and they do bounce back. So I'm excited to welcome Carl Folks from the Folks firm, who will be moderating this panel. Welcome, Carl.
Thank you, Portia. I'm excited for this panel. Responding to mistakes, strategies for financial. I think the music industry and the music business, and the creative space in general, definitely has, is definitely reluctant to maybe address or acknowledge some of the financial adversities that artists and producers and graphic designers, everyone in the ecosystem, make, right? And this panel is all about responding to those mistakes. We're all human. It happens. It's one of those things that's inevitable. We all make mistakes. Some tend to be what some others. At the same time, almost every mistake came back from. Great panel of a lot of different players in the music business, and I'm excited. Record labels, a publishing company, advocacy group, representatives from all, and I'm really excited to talk to everybody. So awesome. I usually like to, in these scenarios, go through everyone by allowing them to introduce themselves, just in case I get anything wrong. We'll start with Dan. Dan Wiseman over at, one second, my screen just went back. Dan Wiseman over at Bernstein Private Wealth Management. Yep.
Thanks for having me. So I work in finance now, but I spent 15 years as an artist manager, managing everyone from Mike Posner, Wale, Big Sean, Capital Cities, and I did a 5-year stint at Rock Nation. So I've been on every side of the coin, dealing with accounts receivable in the music industry, and now managing people's wealth, including a number of artists. So I've kind of seen it from all angles, but excited to be here today.
That's awesome. We have Blair Clark, over CEO, Marketing Director at Brooklyn Basement Records.
Hi. Yes, I run Brooklyn Basement Records, and we are an independent record company, but we also do marketing for artists off-label who we work with on a more of a project management basis. And I am also an artist manager for the independent artist Ron Pope, and have been for about a decade. So it's been quite a journey.
Quite a journey. That's
yes.
Great to hear. Lisa Robinson over at SongTrust, VP of Income Tracking. I've done a lot of work with SongTrust, so I'm very familiar with you guys. But yeah.
Good. Thank you, Carl, for introducing me. I appreciate it. Yes, I'm happy to be here. As Carl mentioned, my name is Lisa Robinson. I'm the Vice President of Income Tracking at SongTrust. SongTrust is the largest global royalty collection service and publishing administrator. We have a number of clients. We have Jeremy Zucker, we have Masigo, the list goes on. And for income tracking, I want to know where the money is. So it's very important for me to be on this panel and talk from that perspective. So yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Anyone who knows where the money's coming from is an important person.
Thank you.
Yes. We have Rob over at Hi-Fi, who's the VP of Membership.
Hey, everybody. Rob Bonstein here from Hi-Fi. We are a financial rights organization, and that means we have a membership that's mostly composed of artists, managers, and business managers, kind of at the professional level in the music industry, and we build bespoke solutions for the financial side of their lives. So what that's meant so far has been tools like the Hi-Fi Royalties Dashboard, which is a mobile way to automatically consolidate all of your financial royalty reporting into a single dashboard and have a real 360 understanding of your royalties, where they're coming from, lag times in reporting, and much more. But we also create a community among our members with events. We've had Alex Gershwin from SongTrust give a presentation to some members. And we're also piloting financial products like cash flow, which can pay an artist every 2 weeks, just like a salary, rather than sort of waiting for those long gaps between royalty payments. And my personal background is I've come from the traditional record label days, doing digital marketing and digital financial projections, kind of general manager type roles in the artist management world, and also the touring space, the talent agencies, Windish and Paradigm. So trying to kind of keep a very full view of what it means to represent an artist's financial life and help them find the solutions.
Awesome. That sounds a cool company. I was actually on the website today. I need to apply for a membership. I'll hit you about that offline.
Yeah, we'd love to have you.
Yeah, awesome. I just want to set the stage here. Again, this panel is really about helping artists, avoid financial mistakes, but again, they happen. So how do we sort of correct or amend these mistakes? I guess we'll start with you, Rob. What are some of the most common financial mistakes you see creatives make early in their career?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think, there's a financial dimension to almost every decision that you make. Some of them are more long-term, some of them are more short-term. I think that there's a lot of different ways to think about it. I'm sure a lot of them, fall into kind of your camp as the resident attorney, and I'll give the "I am not a lawyer" statement here. But you could find yourself in a business relationship with somebody that can really restrict your flexibility down the road. That kind of thing can definitely be a common sort of mistake, as well as I think people who are just unfamiliar with the sort of conventions of the professional music industry. I've definitely run across both in my management days and among the hi-fi membership, people who are paying a substantial fee to a so-called manager without people realizing that management is generally done on a commission basis. You can pay for lots of services in the music industry. It's not typical in that kind of a relationship. But I think most importantly, is people finding the right balance between focusing on the creative and the business sides of their career. I think that you can just as easily fall onto the other side of the coin, where you're so intent on reading every single word of Don Passman's book and trying to figure out every single thing that you're supposed to do to register your copyrights and Library of Congress, and like, I'm supposed to do all this stuff, but you're missing the steps where you have to be creative and build a creative network of collaborators, build a network of professional partners, whether those are managers, agents, other people who can be a part of your team, who take a lot of the load off from thinking about those things that are extremely important, and that I would very much endorse artists to be very well informed about the business side of their career. But I think if you fail to build relationships and you kind of just get into a transactional relationship where you pay somebody for streaming promotion, you pay somebody for publicity, and then no results come back, that might be because you haven't done the deep investment of your time in all those dimensions of your career that really can pay dividends down the road. So that things like signing to a talent agency and just assuming that the agent is going to be the one that gets you an opening slot on a tour when you haven't spent the time to make friends with all the other bands in your scene, or things like that. So I think assuming that it's going to be someone else's job to do something for you can be, in a lot of cases, the biggest financial mistake of all.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's always like a multitude of things happening at the same time, and it feels like maybe there's never one thing, but it's a conjunction of a lot of decisions that a lot of artists you make in the industry that sort of lead to financial mistakes. Lisa, what about you? I know you're obviously on the pub side. What are some of the mistakes that that people come into Song Trust dealing with, or maybe have had in the future?
Well, I think firstly and most importantly is not truly understand publishing. For every VH1 Behind the Music back in the day and Unsung that comes on TV1, it's usually people lost their money because of drugs or because they didn't understand publishing and didn't understand the importance of it. So educating yourself, Rob touched upon, Donald Passman's book, which is like the Bible, and it's great, read that, but there's so much information out there, you should be educated. So even if you do hire someone who's handling your publishing, understand what that means. What's the difference between a co-pub deal and an admin deal? What happens if I take this advance, this high advance? Do you understand what recoupment means? It's a loan. We're giving you money now, but guess what? You have to. We're going to take it back. Also, the importance of proper registration. Rob and I write a song together. Rob puts his splits in. I put my splits in. We agree. We want to make sure that's put into place as well. And I can't say that enough, especially from income tracking. We're at the tail end. We want to make sure you get compensated for your work. But if it's not properly registered, guess what? No one gets paid, or maybe someone gets paid that shouldn't. So it's a matter of really understanding what you're stepping into. Something even as simple as understanding your statement. When you get your statement, do you know how to read it? Do you know what this means? Do you know how much money you should be getting back? So it's just things like that. I would just say the importance of education from the publishing perspective. Yes, we have experts at Song Trust, but you should also have, a dog in this fight and make sure you understand what you're signing up for. Literally, what are you signing up for?
Yeah, so true. I think one thing you hit on that I think that really is a touch spot for me is the metadata, and people just not registering songs correctly. It could just set off a chain reaction of you're not getting paid for a while. And shout out to Song Trust too. Just in general, they put out a lot of educational materials, and a lot of music companies don't do that because it kind of probably cuts against their business model. But Song Trust is uniquely one of those companies that puts a lot of good stuff out there. Blair, what about you? I mean, you have years of experience as a manager, but also on the label side. So I'm sure you have some unique insights on some of the financial issues that managers face. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I honestly could talk about this all day because we made a lot of these mistakes early in my career. And, it is part of it is a learning process. But hopefully, if you're here and listening, then you can avoid some of these mistakes that we made. One, kind of what Rob talked about, you can't hire your way to success. There are plenty of people that will take your money in this business, and not all of them are going to do a good job. Not all of them are going to do the work for you. So don't assume that just because you're giving somebody your money that they're going to be, doing the right job or even the right person for you. And two is to really look out for companies that are happy to take advantage of young independent artists that are, for lack of a better word, scams. Right now, there are a bunch of Spotify promotional companies out there that charge to guarantee plays. And I can understand how intriguing that is for a new artist. You think that you can buy your way to plays, but it really does nothing to help your career. It could potentially, you get kicked off of Spotify. And so it's mistakes like these they can be tricky because it looks like it's a great deal or a good opportunity. But I would say just to, make sure you do build up your community of artists around you so that you do have people to ask, does this seem right? Have you talked to these people before? Have you heard of them? Before you jump into a situation where you're out a ton of money. And then three, the artist I manage, Ron, actually brought this one up the other day. As much as possible, avoid getting into high interest debt. Again, I know putting a lot of things on credit cards is sometimes the only option. But if you can do that as little as possible at the beginning to where you're not just racking up debt after debt, you'll be a lot better off down the road.
Yeah, that's very true. I love how you kind of just acknowledge that like mistakes were made in the beginning, but it didn't necessarily derail anything. It was a setback, not something that you couldn't overcome or your clients couldn't overcome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dan, I mean, as a trusted advisor for, on the financial side for artists for a long time, I'm sure you probably have some real encounters with maybe people coming to you and their money maybe wasn't used the best, or they made financial mistakes. Can you talk about some of those?
Yeah, I mean, well, on working in wealth management now, the three things you can control as far as your wealth goes is where you live, how much you spend, and how the money's invested. And I think the how much you spend part is really important. Going back to my days as an artist manager, so often artists early on in their career are like, well, I need money. And really drilling down as to why you need money aside from the basic necessities of living. The biggest one I get is like, oh, to pay for X, Y, and Z, or to pay for marketing. I'm like, okay, well, what's your idea of marketing? And then you really start drilling down in it, and they actually don't know what they really need to pay for. And then that shifts to the conversation of, hey, there's people that have done more with less, and there's people that have done less with more. I've yet to see an artist not make it because there was not enough money backing them, ever in the history of my time in the music industry. It wasn't like, you know what, this artist would have made it if they just had $50,000. Maybe the artist needed to put some money in their pocket, fine, but spending extra money on, Spotify promotion, or back in the day, radio promotion, et cetera, it's, money is not the barrier to success in the music business. Finding fans is, and making better art. Those are the two biggest barriers to success in the music business.
Awesome. And I'll stay with you, Dan, and then we'll get some insight from the rest of the group. I like to speak in terms of habits, because habits, when you form them and you do them repetitively over a long time, they tend to yield great results. What are some of the habits and that musicians and creatives can form to help get themselves out of these mistakes, right? I mean, it's not an overnight process. Who should they be going to? What should they be doing to sort of correct, some of these financial mistakes?
Yeah, I think it's really important to always ask why something is happening. And if the answer is because this is how it's done, that's a really terrible answer. There's a lot of people that are in horrible deals because this is how it's done. I think back to a record deal that I negotiated back in 2012 with a major label, and it was between two major labels, and one was offering typical record deal, 18-point royalty. I even think it had 360 rights in it. And I was able to get a 50-50 joint venture with this other record label, which was unheard of at the time, especially for a new artist. Now it's much more common. And the lawyer, the label said, I don't think this is going to happen, blah, blah. We ended up making it happen. It wasn't common at the time, and that's not how things were done at the time, but we got it done. And that decision right there between, taking an 18-point royalty deal versus taking a 50-50 joint venture license deal, one album, one option, they own all their rights. They recouped on their record deal and made about an additional $6 million off their record deal, because we had a 50-50 joint venture. If they had signed that typical record deal with that other, record label, they would have never recouped on their deal. So they have another $6 million in their pocket because we simply said, give us a 50-50 joint venture and we'll sign with you. And somebody pulled some strings and it happened. So you should always ask why. And again, if somebody tells you because this is industry standard, well, industry standards have changed over the years, and you should never accept that as sort of bond.
Yeah, it's a totally different game these days, and that's why we'll get to this a little bit later. But that's why I always say you should have just good business people in your team, people who've either had success in other industries, or just have a good idea of how good business is run. Because when those people sort of take a look at some of the stuff that's going on in the music business, they tend to make some some good suggestions that aren't necessarily groundbreaking, but they kind of challenge the status quo, which just needs to happen. Rob, I want to jump to you on that too. What habits, what habits or what decisions, or how can musicians and creators really get themselves out of some of these financial mistakes?
Yeah, I think the sort of habits that I think about almost as building them up like muscles is a problem solving mindset. I think that speaks to Dan's point about doing more with less and focusing on the real needs, finding great fans, finding more fans, and making great art. Those are the real the key parts of the equation. The process that you use to get through any financial difficulties that you've put yourself into, or that you've gotten into by no fault of your own. This is an old saying from from the record business, but like the hit kind of cures all ills. If you can find your way to success, that's going to give you the best chance of getting out of a situation that happened to you earlier in your career, where you may have more leverage. You may be able to collaborate on a creative solution with the production company that you got into a weird deal with that got you locked down in some way. Anything, having the resources to hire the right team can really help that. But that problem solving mindset, I think, still goes back to that. That idea of focusing on what's really most important to your immediate needs, as well as just curiosity and a collaborative mindset too. You are going to have to bring a team together in some cases to solve these problems, and that might be a financial advisor, legal advisor, members of the of a publishing team, or a strong administrator who can pick up the pieces with you and find all those splits that were entered incorrectly by a bad former collaborator who's claimed 100% of a song. You should have that curiosity to understand what's gone wrong, so you don't make the mistake again. But you still need to collaborate with a team to really pull that together.
Couldn't agree more. Lisa, anything there on the pub side? I think helping creatives get out.
I mean, Rob said it best. I mean, yes, again, I'm speaking from, the songwriter, which a lot of times the songwriter happens to be, the artist. But Rob said it best, if you can't be that person who's going to be, let's say, the liaison with the likes of Song Trust, you need someone knowledgeable that can. I'm not saying you have to commit to memory every single pay source throughout the globe and their distribution schedules or anything of the like, but you should probably have someone on your team that can tell you, hey, you're about to get your performance royalties from your PRO, or, you're about to get royalties from, PRS and GAMA. And then when you hear these, you're not thinking, what is a PRS? What is a GAMA? So I think Rob and Dan, really said it best. It's your team. Who do you have surrounding you? Who's your squad? Who's on your squad? Just making sure that they're knowledgeable, and you as well. But again, if you don't have time to check that statement, pay someone who can and make sure they know what they're doing.
And I'll add at that point too that we believe at Hi-Fi that a reliance on technology can also help kind of shortcut some of those most impactful short-term needs that you have to focus on finding whether it's making sure that when your next check is coming, or having a way to kind of more quickly understand what's going on beneath the surface of those royalty statements, which can be pretty impenetrable. So we believe that the technology can take some of that heavy lift off of teams, so that it's not just all human power, which can be expensive. It can mean giving up a higher percentage of what you're making to somebody who you may not need that level of professionalism at an early stage of your career, or the professionals around you have a lot of really important stuff to do, and they may not have the time to be delving into the details of a royalty statement. So we think that that technology has a big part to play in helping people prioritize those steps that they can take to really own their financial situation as well.
Yeah, Rob, the old school way of business, it should stay in the old, right? I mean, I think technology is one of the best ways that the music industry can catch up and help level the playing field, right? I really think technology is going to do it, in addition to blockchain. But I'll save that speech for another day. Blair, I mean, on the label side, on the management side, what were some of the things that you did as a manager and are doing as a manager, and then on the record label side, what were some of the things that musicians and creatives really could do to help get themselves out of some of these financial mistakes?
I mean, from a very basic perspective, because I deal with a lot of independent artists that don't have a big team, get organized as much as possible, like knowing when, look on the websites of your PRO, they have when your payout dates are. So put those into your calendar, and you can get alerted. It's that simple. And learn how to do some basic budgeting. I know that so many people get in over their head going on tour, and it's pretty simple to build a tour budget, money in, money out, because you can that's the best way to Just figure out how much you have to, how much room you have to play with. And then like there's some things that you can do when you're first starting your business or your artist project. You need to create an LLC, get a bank account in that in your LLC's name, get a credit card so that everything can kind of go in one place and that you're not scatterbrained all over the map when tax time comes and all of these things start piling up in your personal life and you have your project too. So I think that there's a lot of things that are just really easy that people don't think about. Just stay organized.
Yes, staying organized is super crucial, and it's just crazy the amount of artists, producers, songwriters that have money coming in that they don't have a budget for. It just comes in, and they kind of spend it however way they spend it, but there's no budget in place. Having a budget.
Yeah. And, from a project management standpoint, what we do, before we even get into it is we, are thinking a year in advance for something or, on a shorter timeline, like 3 to 6 months. And that's pretty tight. But the best thing that you can do for yourself is look in advance and see what you're doing so that you can walk backwards and see how much money you need for something, how much money you think you'll be bringing in. It's not rocket science at the end of the day. It's just kind of, doing a few little steps to add in before you commit to something.
Yeah. I want to change gears a little bit. I want to talk about sort of what role teams should play in all of this, right? I think, when the outcry happens, an artist is in bad financial shape or, mistakes were made, everyone sort of blames the team. Could be true. But what is the label or, some of the stakeholders or managers' role in, helping artists make consistent, better financial decisions? Dan, I'll start with you there.
I feel actually very strongly about this. I think there's not enough of it. And the thing that I refer to is that most people in the music business only care about accounts receivable. And once the money's in, it's kind of like, okay, well, the money's in. Great. We made the guy, the client money. Our work here is done. They didn't lose money. Our work here is done. And there's not enough of a holistic approach. And this is part of the reason why I left being an artist manager and now work in wealth management, is because so much of the music industry is about, number one, I don't want to get blamed for a problem. And number two, I want to be able to clearly blame somebody else for this problem. And if you don't take on the responsibility of helping shepherd your client in the right direction to find, for instance, a great wealth manager, because you don't want to get blamed if there's a downturn in the market, and the market's down 35% and your artist is asking, well, why am I down 20%? You don't want to get blamed for that. Well, then the artist is basically left to their own devices to find someone. And what ends up happening is the people that find artists, and this often happens with athletes as well, are generally bottom feeders and are generally the worst of the worst, because it's really the laziest form of prospecting there is. A, or B, it's somebody finds them that's, so entrenched in the music industry that they're like, hey, I'll help you get this record deal, whatever. And rather than fight for instance, a 50-50 joint venture, they'll deal with a 18-point royalty deal because they're going to get paid their, $30,000 fee on the record deal with a letter of direction from the artist directly from the label. They don't really care what the terms of the deal are because they're probably thinking, hey, in 5 years, I'm not going to be working with this artist anyway. So what does it matter? I'd rather be in good with the business affairs person at the label. Finding people that are going to fight even against their own best interests for the artist's best interest. I had an opportunity to sign a very well-known artist to a production deal. And I explained they wanted to do it together with me. And I explained to him, I said, if we do this, you're going to end up hating me. And this will cripple you for the rest of your career. As much as I'd love to do this, this is not what's in your best interest. I ended up managing him. He ended up firing me. He ended up hiring me back again. We still work together to this day in some capacity, but that would have been in my best interest to sign him to a production deal, but it wasn't in his best interest. So it's really about finding people that are going to put the artist's best interest front and center at all times, ahead of their own best interest. That's how you can truly be a fiduciary. otherwise, you're not looking out for their best interest. And so I think finding people that would live and die by their integrity, very rare in the music industry. Those are the best people you can possibly find, more so than anyone with connections or any other, BS that somebody might be peddling you.
Man, I've lost clients, not doing, being truthful as possible, or, sort of, staying away from production deals in general. Those are just tough. I mean, again, I don't want to get too deep in production deals and the way they sort of form, but integrity in the music business, like any other business, is super, super important. And, I love the focus on team building. That's where it's at. The people you pick as an artist they really kind of hold the keys to your future. You're going to obviously have a say in everything that happens, but you need to enable them and trust them to do their job, and you need to know that their integrity and their moral values and everything is in line with yours, and they're doing the best job they can. Blair, I wanted to jump to you, get some feedback on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's very crucial to have managers input and to be very involved, because it's just part of the whole business of creating this artist, So yeah, I mean, you do have to have somebody that you trust. I feel like we keep going back to your team and how important it is to surround yourself with people that you trust and have your best interests at heart. But I personally am very involved and, have spreadsheets out the wazoo. And that's actually how I started doing some stuff with Hi-Fi, because they are starting a really good system of pulling a lot of that into one place. But yeah, I mean, and from the project management side of things that we do, I did just advise an artist to not hire us because it was basically going to be a redundancy. And so I probably could have taken on this artist and, done some marketing for them that, I personally felt would have been just doubling up, but I know that they're an independent artist and their budget is limited. And so it just wasn't the best choice, even though I love the artist and the album. And so that's always weird. But at the same time, I feel good about my choice because I know that I'm actually helping her more than, taking some, a fee to do a job that somebody else was already doing. So I do think that it's important to get an outsider's perspective, or get your manager's perspective. And as a manager, be very involved in those, because at the end of the day, you're just, thinking about the longevity of the career in general.
Yep. That's so true. I think like the people you pick long term it's everything. Those are decisions that either make or break a person's career. The people you pick. Rob, where does it sort of fit in with sort of like Hi-Fi and the what you guys do and in regards to maybe helping artists and is I feel like a lot of what the mission of Hi-Fi was kind of built around maybe bad stakeholders or external forces that lead artists in the wrong direction.
Yeah, well, let me first start by saying that what Dan and Blair both said is so important, and I think is a North Star for the whole industry to aspire to that responsibility of stakeholders to sort of meet the creative wherever they are and understand when like the economics of a deal that you would normally like to do with someone might not be right for them. It might put them into a situation personally or professionally that they won't be able to recover from. And I think that understanding that we have that responsibility in everything that we do, no matter whether we're, a technology-centric financial rights organization, management, label, publisher, that hopefully we can all come to be working with artists from that perspective. And so meeting artists where they are on our side means everything from not making any assumptions about somebody's level of sophistication and bringing education to them where they are. So if somebody creates a Hi-Fi account and they don't connect the Sound Exchange account. Folks may or may not know in the audience what Sound Exchange is. If you don't know what it is and you're an artist, this is an opportunity to go educate yourself and probably go sign up for it. But if somebody's creating a Hi-Fi account and linking maybe their TuneCore royalties and their Songtrust royalties, then they don't link a Sound Exchange account, we can tell them, hey, you didn't link Sound Exchange. You should educate yourself about what that is. Click here to go learn more and sign up for a Sound Exchange account to collect a form of royalties that you have to register in order to collect. So meeting people there and helping them kind of connect those dots where we can kind of meet them right at that point is really valuable, we think. But also just helping them understand their true value when they're evaluating a deal. We've had a number of managers who've had artists that they come to work with when they start really kind of having an uptick in their career, and they realize that artist has put a couple of tracks out over here and a couple of tracks out with this distributor, and the whole picture is sort of spread all over the world, and they're put in a position where they're trying to evaluate a deal, whether it's with an artist services company or administrator or a traditional record label, and they need to be able to figure out what they're worth. Like, what would happen if I just didn't do anything? How much money do I actually generate month over month from all these revenue sources that are coming to me on all these different statements, and be able to use that information to actually evaluate, okay, these people want to sign a deal, to distribute my work in the future, but they also want the catalog and they're proposing X amount of money. Is that a fair amount of money? I think that can be a challenging problem to solve, that either involves expensive expertise of people who may or may not be able to come in at that stage of your career, or a time-consuming project where you have kind of you've got a project that's just blowing up and you need to make a decision on a partner very quickly. You don't want to be put in a position where that pressure makes you choose a wrong decision. So we think that things like that are extremely high value moments in an artist's career, and making that choice or not, and by being able to put more information in front of the artist more quickly, we hope that clarity of understanding can help the artist make the right choice. Or at least a better choice than kind of flying blind, or I think, as Dan said, relying on the advice of somebody who just kind of knows that they're going to get their cut of your advance check, and therefore is incentivized to maybe want advance to be as big as possible, which may or may not be the right thing for you. You should have a say in that. And we think that technology can help accomplish all those things, and the royalties dashboard is going a long way towards that.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Lisa, I kind of want to touch there too. I mean, like when you're on the song trust side and just in general on the pub side, what stakeholders are you dealing with, or are you seeing making some of the decisions for artists? Like who's actually saying let's go to song trust and collect, and we'll have a fee, but we'll get all your royalties across the globe, and we'll stay in a flexible situation. Like, are those conversations happening? Who's making those decisions? Is it the artist, somebody on the team?
I think it's a little of both. We definitely deal with across the board, our onboarding team, our CAT team, client acquisition. It runs the gamut. They can have a manager reach out to them who's not really familiar with Song Trust. Exactly what is it that Song Trust does? How is Song Trust different from everyone else? Why should I affiliate with Song Trust? And I've heard people say it's more like a do-it-yourself a la carte, and and that is it, but it still requires education. You still need to understand where you want us to administer your works. Yes, we can administer half your catalog or your entire catalog. We can do it globally. We can do it domestically. So we really deal with everybody. I think, just to stay in line with the question that you posed to the rest of the panel, for me, from income tracking, it's what does a client want to know and what do they need to know? And yes, you need to know if you have 50 million streams, that doesn't mean you're going to get $50 million. So sometimes we are the bearer of bad news, or at least income tracking is, but I always say you have to manage expectations. And Song Trust is very, good at that, in terms of letting them know, hey, yes, we value your work. We value your creativity. We want to make sure you get as much money as possible for the exploitation of your work. But it's kind of like you have to help us help you do that. And if that's the manager, if that's the songwriter themselves, so be it. But it definitely runs the gamut.
Yeah, 50 million streams does not equal $50 million.
No, it does not.
That's great. Anybody in the crowd, if you guys have a question, please leave it in the comments. We'll get to it in a bit. One of my last questions, and we'll stay with Lisa and go around, is, where is the money? And I guess that's a question for you, Lisa, and maybe for some of the others there. What aren't creatives and musicians doing with the money that they should be? I think there's Dan, you kind of touched it, a little bit about complacency and maybe accounts receivable. They're not worried about maybe being active with their money. Lisa, we'll start with you. Where is the money? Yeah.
For income tracking, it needs to be under every rock, because that's where I'm looking. That's what I have to do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's out there. Music is being exploited globally, right? Music makes the world go round. Yeah, you may have a song that's more popular in one region as opposed to another, but you need to be aware of that, as a creative, as a songwriter. You need to know, Rob touched upon it, all the different revenue streams, all the services, have an understanding of what they do. Do you know the difference between YouTube? Do you understand the difference between streaming programming, streaming on demand? I mean, we can sit here all day, but there are a number of revenue streams. This music industry has definitely evolved since I first entered it in the 90s, and it's come a long way, and you have to keep up with it as well. So, let's add sync to the pot. There's something else. There's another revenue stream. So there's money out there, but please get your splits in first, and then it's kind of, take it from there. But yeah, it's out there.
Yep. Dan, I want to jump to you again. Obviously the first thing is kind of like, maybe what are some of the things that people aren't doing, with their money that they should be, as they're trying to build wealth and, get to the next level of life, right?
Yeah, I think number one is, talk to, when you do start making some money, talk to an accountant like immediately. You'd be surprised, or maybe not, but how many stories I hear of artists, as recently as, this year, that get signed for, 8-figure advances and have the wire go to their personal checking account. Not setting up an LLC, ahead of time to act as a furnishing company, not setting up, a business account, et cetera. Making sure when you start making money, you put some money into a SEP IRA, in the first year that you can qualify. I mean, that's a great way to save money and grow money tax-free. A lot of people don't know that as a self-employed, independent contractor artist, you can actually save money for retirement, and the government actually allows you to save more money than if you're just a normal employee. And so a lot of artists don't find out until maybe 5 years after they've been making money that, hey, I could have been saving, $55,000 a year for retirement. But also just, basic stuff of, making sure your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted. Registering your song as a copyright is far less important than making sure you have an LLC set up so you can write off a bunch of your income for tax purposes. I'm going to tell you that right now. You're going to save way more money setting up a proper business structure than you are for any potential copyright infringements that might come along somewhere down the line. And so making sure that you're focusing on the stuff that's actually important and impactful, as opposed to these sort of artificial boxes to check that make you feel like you're making progress when it's really just minutia and sort of, busy work.
Yeah. It sounds like when people start making money, they need to start. I'm looking at people like you, Dan, and I'm trying to get them on their team. That's really what it comes down to. Rob?
Yeah, I think where the money is, I think, to the point that Dan made earlier, that unique and special relationship between the fan and the artist is where the money really comes from. Fans who care passionately about you, they'll be with you along your journey. If you had that fan base going into last year, and you had to cancel a tour, that's the way that you had an opportunity to become a Twitch streamer, or to start a Patreon, or to, just the conversation that Portia just had with Andrew from Bandcamp. to be able to let people know about a special opportunity to directly support you through buying on Bandcamp Friday. That passion, is I think really special. It's also what we monetize in this business, and that's something that really is at the core. So we don't want to lose that. But that being said, this is a complex business, and there's a lot of places where that actual dollars can get lost along the way. Whether it's just the complexity and the speed of the business in the streaming age, with frequent releases and lots of collaborations and samples, and people who've been in multiple phases of their career in different deals, that they're getting different reporting. It's just easy to let things slip through the cracks. You've got to get your splits in so that you can get paid on publishing. And all this stuff it feels like maybe it's not the most important thing when you want to get the track out yesterday, because it's ready to go and you think Spotify is digging the music that you're putting out. That's a tough position to be in, because it means that you're having to keep a lot of plates spinning at the same time, and that doesn't just affect small artists, that affects big artists all the time. We've heard from artists that did a remix and didn't really remember that they had done it until they heard it playing on like a rest stop on I-95, and then they're like, hey, did I ever get paid for that? They asked their manager asked the business manager and the lawyer. They realized, oh, you know what, we never got a fully executed agreement on that, and things never got paid. And guess what, there is some money there. It's 10, 20, 30 grand. Like, that's a meaningful amount of money for any artist, but especially over the last year. And I think that that has led a lot of folks, even the biggest artists in the world, to, as Lisa said, turn over a lot of stones looking for that revenue that might have been missed. And again, not to be totally repetitive, but we really think that the leveraging technology to help identify those gaps more proactively and get those holes closed up much faster is something that's really exciting to us at Hi-Fi. And ultimately, where where the money is hopefully going to eventually be on your Hi-Fi dashboard.
And Blair, I just want to get to you before we close out here.
Yeah, sure. First of all, everything that Dan said, I want to underscore about 5,000 times. It's so important. And the second that you can start saving money, absolutely do it, because you are your own safety net in this business. In terms of looking for the money where it could be, yes, get educated on where all the sources are. But I also want to say, start digging into your data. Once you do have some success on the platforms, look and see where songs are performing well, which ones are doing better. Maybe it's an older song from your catalog that just started getting put into the algorithm a little bit, that you could, put a little bit of money behind on ads, and it could take it over the top. I think there's a lot of information out there for you to analyze, like what's going on and where your time is best spent. So, time is money. And that's where you can find some of it, is not spinning your wheels by, working on something that's just not resonating with people. So, I know a lot of people don't love the data points, especially if you're a new artist, to dig into numbers, but it is very important, and it can be very helpful to find new sources of revenue.
Awesome. You guys killed that answer. I just want to say thank you to all the panelists. I mean, you guys have brought so much information. I've learned a lot, even just through moderation. Just want to open up if you have any last comments or anything you want to just say to the audience before we push it back to Portia. Your answers were thorough and much appreciated. But if anybody has any final comments, please let me know, or feel free to chime in. Right now. And if not, thankful again. And this has been a great event. And I've done a lot of these, but this is one of the most important ones for creatives, right? I don't think money is like a weird, frightening topic for artists, producers, creatives, and it shouldn't be something that you got to get comfortable with. And earlier you get comfortable with finance and your money, the more the more success you'll have long term, the more you'll be able to sort of help your family help those around you, and sort of grow your own. So never forget those things. So appreciate the panel. Awesome job, everyone. Yeah.
Of course. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys so much. That was so amazing. Oh my God, dropping pearls of wisdom. I was like taking notes. It was awesome. I know that people in the chat really loved it too. So thank you guys so much. And we will see you guys all down the road.